Well, change is often destabilizing, and I think that the kind of transformation that's necessary in politics and economics in the Arab world is going to take a long time to take hold. So it's certainly too early to make a final judgment, but ultimately what we see are demands coming from below. Young people who want to bridge the gap between their aspirations for themselves and the economic and political opportunities that they actually see around them. So if governments can respond to that, if the private sector can respond to that, then I think we have the potential for a young, dynamic, educated Arab world to be a real engine for growth. I think we are at a turning point in Syria and in terms of the international approach to Syria. Efforts to achieve some kind of diplomatic progress to halt the conflict or even to improve the humanitarian situation have stalled because of disagreements in the international community, but mostly because those doing the fighting on the ground are more interested in fighting than in talking. And so I think that it's going to be a real challenge even to contain the effects of this conflict and to reduce the human cost until the dynamics between the parties doing the fighting change on the ground. Now, of course, it's important that outside actors don't do anything that will make the situation on the ground worse, that will make the fighting more intense, that will accelerate the kinds of sectarian cleansing that's now taking place, in which the Assad regime bombs a city and then creates a channel to allow civilians to flee so that it can take over. We've seen this sort of thing before, and it's important that we do everything we can to halt that dynamic. But I think it's going to be difficult to bring this conflict to a close until those doing the fighting realize that that is not going to be their route to success. You know, the idea of energy independence has been almost a political dream for some in the United States for a long time. But as a practical matter, we live in a globalized world. It has a global energy market. And no matter where the United States buys its energy, it has an interest in ensuring that the economies that it trades with have access to energy too. So I think that in many ways, America's interest in securing the free flow of energy to global markets and in working to ensure the stability of energy prices globally, that's the same as it's always been. I think that what we see in the United States today is, I guess, a sense of exhaustion, but also a sense of skepticism about the effectiveness of American engagements abroad. Now, partly this might be questioning the value of those engagements because America doesn't need foreign oil anymore. But I think a lot of it is just the long shadow cast across American society by more than a decade of war in Iraq and Afghanistan and the lessons of those conflicts. Now, of course, we have to be careful not to overlearn those lessons and not to apply that sense of self-restraint across the board, because there are certain kinds of investments in foreign assistance or trade relationships that are worth making and don't carry the same kinds of risks as military engagement. Not everything is a slippery slope to war. And I think that's the challenge, is to help the American public recognize its interest in remaining engaged in global affairs.